Oh my goodness, the light this afternoon is so beautiful. It is such a privilege to be out just enjoying the gorgeous light as it streams through the trees. I've been spending far too much time indoors on the computer the last few weeks, a mixture of bad weather but also working hard to get Photographic Connections ready to launch, which of course you will have heard about earlier this week. But being out in this glorious afternoon with this lovely light streaming through the trees is not the only exciting news I have today. This beautiful lens also arrived this week. I'm now officially the proud owner of the Nikon Z 105mm macro lens. Now, of course, I had this lens on loan back in February, absolutely fell in love with it, and I'm now so happy to be the owner of this lens. So if you enjoy macro photography, stay tuned because there will be more macro content coming up on my channel moving forwards. And today I'm out reconnecting with this lens because spring has now officially fully sprung. I've seen snowdrops, daffodils and crocuses walking around here today, and I've just heard my first chiff chaff. So yes, spring is officially here. Let's get this beautiful lens on my camera and begin today's photography adventure. I was actually at this location this morning, and when I was walking around I saw all these beautiful crocuses and I thought, wow, they would make a great macro image. However, I've now returned in the afternoon and as you can see they're mostly in the shade now. So not only have we not really got any light on these crocuses now, they've also closed up. So the really interesting middle part of the flower isn't visible at the moment. I do still really like them. I do like the colours within them and the petals, the shapes and patterns on the petals. So I may take a few images and just see how they turn out. But yeah, what I'd really envisaged for this afternoon isn't actually going to work out, which to be fair is my own fault. I didn't think this through quite as well as I should have done. And I've also forgotten to take my mini tripod with me, which is really frustrating because I was going to try focus stacking with the macro lens for the first time. And I can't do that now, not really without a tripod. I mean, I can, but ideally I'd like to use a tripod. But you know me, I'm not one to give up. So I'm going to still take some images this afternoon, see how they turn out, and just embrace this beautiful afternoon. As I always say, there's always photographic opportunities, and when things don't go to plan, or as you'd hoped they would, there's other opportunities, there's other things to photograph, other things to do. And actually, often some of your best images come when you're forced to photograph something else. So with that in mind, let's see what I can create. Straight off the bat, this afternoon proved to be challenging. The first images of the crocuses would have been the perfect subject to practice focus stacking. As you can see here, only a very small portion of the image is in focus. At the time of taking this, I was feeling really frustrated with the results. The blurry effect combined with the low light didn't look very good on the back of camera. However, once reviewing these images on the computer and doing some basic editing, I grew to love these images, particularly this one here. I loved the tiny details on the petal, combined with the artistic feeling the blurred areas created. I guess this shows the subjectivity of photography and how you can never really know how an image has turned out until you get home. My dad pointed out a tree to me further down the track with some fresh growth on it. Compositionally, I found these really difficult to photograph, but I fell in love with the late afternoon light and couldn't resist taking an image or two. The next image is possibly my favourite of the afternoon. Initially, I was going to bin this image, as it's not quite in focus. But following a recent conversation with the photographer Mally Davis, I realised that not all images have to be pin sharp. After all, softness can portray emotion, and the softness in this image, combined with the light, certainly creates feeling. On the day up until this point, I didn't think any of my images had turned out well, and there are a number that I've had to bin. I was hopeful though that the next subject I came across would create something of interest. Things are not quite going to plan this afternoon. Now, being completely honest, macro photography is pretty new to me. I've done it bits and bobs here in the past, and of course I made a few videos doing macro photography back in February. It's a genre of photography that I love. Some days when I'm out, I find it quite easy to find opportunities, and other days I really struggle because it's an aspect of photography that I'm still learning and evolving in. And I wanted to share this because sometimes when we're out on afternoons like this, where things just aren't going to plan, we can sometimes be really hard on ourselves and be like, oh, why is things not working? Why are these compositions not working? Why am I finding it hard to focus? Why am I putting the settings up and down to try and get a fast enough shutter speed and it's still not quite fast enough to freeze things in motion, forgetting that not only are we dealing with macro photography and minute detail, but it's also a bit windy today and things are moving around. Afternoons like this afternoon are the afternoons where often we can get really frustrated and annoyed with our cameras and with ourselves. But I think it's really important in these moments to be gentle with ourselves and realise that photography is something that takes practice. It takes time, and some days work out well and some days don't. And this afternoon I'm just finding it a real struggle. I'm struggling with focus, I'm struggling with composition because I'm still relatively new to macro, and because the light this afternoon's kind of working against me as well. It's making finding opportunities very tricky. I think it's worth sharing this because every single photographer goes through this process. The newer you are to a technique, the harder it can be often for things to get things right quickly. And obviously the more practiced you become in an area of photography, the easier it is. So whatever genre of photography you're trying out at the moment, if you're relatively new to it, just be gentle with yourselves, because learning and all the what you may perceive as mistakes is actually, every mistake you make is a learning opportunity. And this afternoon I decided to just stay away from the flowers for a little while, and while I was walking around I came across this green leafy vegetation plant here along the edge of a pond. And it's something that I would never normally think of photographing, but when I look at the leaves, there's these beautiful lines within them, and you can really see the chlorophyll within the leaves, which I just think is so beautiful. And by using a combination of different kind of focal lengths, by kind of, getting really close and doing really up close macro and moving away from it and getting more pattern style images, I'm just playing around with this plant here. And I'm actually getting some results that are pretty interesting. They're not perfect because the wind keeps getting up and moving things around, and I'm still learning this genre of photography. But when I'm getting frustrated with what I initially came here to photograph, I switch my mind to something else, because there's always opportunities. And if they don't work out, they don't work out, but it's always worth trying. And I hope in this little spiel I've just given you to camera, there'll be some words of encouragement there for you in your own photographic journey. So I'm going to share the images with you now that I've taken of this beautiful green foliage, and let me know what you think of them in the comments below. It certainly is always worth trying. In this case, these images didn't quite turn out as I'd hoped though, but I'll show you them anyway, as it's all part of the process. Now before I completely pack up and head home, I'm going to try one last attempt to photograph flowers. The snowdrops are getting past it now, some of them are looking pretty dead, but there's still a few that are looking not too bad. So I'm going to use this beautiful last bit of light here as we get towards the end of the day to try and illuminate them from behind and just see if I can get something, because these flowers is what drew me here today, and I would love to just be able to get one image that I like of one of these flowers, so that I don't know, I can feel like I've connected with them on a deeper level, which would be just a beautiful way to end the afternoon. If I don't, I don't, but if you never try, you'll never know. I think perseverance may have paid off. I think one of the last few images I took of these snowdrops might actually have turned out pretty decent. I was trying to frame them in a way that I was getting a nice crisp image of the snowdrop with something interesting in the frame as well, whether that was the light coming from behind or one of the green leaves sort of framing the underneath of one of the snowdrops. I was just playing around with things and seeing what images I could come up with. I'm excited actually to get home and look at these on the computer, because potentially they've turned out better than I expected. That happens a lot with me, but you never know. You never know. I know there's a lot of images I took today that were out of focus, and I was really struggling with composition in most instances. But here's hoping one of these final images worked out well, because the light right now is pretty nice. That beautiful low light that we've got behind these snowdrops is just really, really beautiful. So fingers crossed, they've turned out okay. And of course you will have seen the images already. So let me know what you've thought of these images in the comments below. It's always interesting to hear what you think of them. And if you're not already subscribed, feel free to subscribe to the channel, where I'm here to help you reconnect with nature through the art of photography. And if you would like to join the Photographic Connections community and listen to the weekly podcast, you can find out all about that in my last video, and the links to all of those things are in the description box below as well. Thank you once again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all again next Sunday.